Hello and welcome back to A Few Bits of News. I'm TB Sliver and today we're going over a few bits of news from the gaming industry and adjacent areas. Except today, it's a recap. Well, this recap is less about the games of Summer Games Fest and E3 and more the events themselves. Krem basically spent the whole weekend watching it and the following 2 weeks writing about it, considering him ranting and decompressing in this. To be fair, this wasn't just his issues with the event, as many brought these up across live media in this current climate, where the choices made did impact everyone. First up, let's talk about DMCA and streaming. For those not in the know, the music industry has doubled down on Twitch and YouTube, striking channels for featuring copyrighted music. Considering the fact that the games industry regularly uses licensed music in their trailers, and these events are just that type of content, you can see where the issue is. This is one of the reasons why Krem was insistent on just continuing on with our regular format of content. Turns out there are many solutions to the issue. Some kind of worked, most didn't. As mentioned in our Square Enix video, they had the most fair design in creating a streamer-friendly version of their event, where the Guardians team actually chose license-free music fitting to the trailers and content, so it was fine to watch. The Life is Strange team just ripped out their music completely, leading to some awkward moments which really sucked the energy from the trailers, making them boring to watch. Kinda proves how important music is in a visual medium about setting the mood of the situation. Twitch's solution was good, but implemented poorly. Twitch obtained the timestamps from the publishers of when DMCA-able music was being played, set up a restream of the event, and told streamers to restream their stream instead. As said, good plan. However, Krem watched the Ubisoft event via this method, and it wasn't good. What actually happened was that Twitch did in fact overlay with its own music, except it was a single track, meaning most of the event the same song was played over and over. To make this worse, the replacement audio was wholesale, meaning any dialogue or descriptions given during the video you didn't hear, and subtitles were needed to be used to understand what was going on. Krem isn't 100% sure, but this method and song continued on for the other events too. He suspects, and is likely correct, streamers using the Twitch solution soon got sick of it. Finally, we cover the Nintendo situation. Nintendo of Japan tweeted out a request. In Twitter's own retranslation, it read, not to mirror the Direct's content, and to post videos after as long as it was within their guidelines. Media took this as, Nintendo doesn't allow people to restream the Direct, and following that, Twitch doubled down by saying to everyone they didn't intend to restream the event themselves, despite having permission, and other streamers shouldn't either, 30 minutes before the event. Turns out all this was false, and was a mistranslation of Nintendo's intent. Restreaming was allowed, just not a direct mirror. All that was required was the streamer's own content, which wasn't limited to just reacting to the Direct. This was found out as several streamers and other trusted media people had to go check with their contacts to make sure that what was going on. It seems like Twitch didn't check themselves and just opted not to stream as it was the safer option. Neither did the outlets promoting the incorrect information bother to issue a retraction, nor check themselves, instead just adding on to Twitch's statement to the situation. This continues to frustrate Kremlik with the state of games media with reaction news than actually doing the legwork to find the factual information. So if you've been watching all our coverage over the Summer Games Fest and E3 season, you'll have noticed that we've only really covered 7 of the many events during the season. There's a reason for that, and it's a simple one. There wasn't much new information given from those events, and one that really shouldn't have been produced the way it was. Let's cover the lack of anything new side of things. 3 events that Krem would have covered would have been the IGN event, the PC Gaming Show, and the Future Gaming Show. However, 3 issues happened. First up, the events were super late at night, that being PC and Future Gaming, which ended up 10:30 at night and midnight respectively, and this was after 2 major events that day on the 4th day of events, so that wasn't going to happen that night. Also, the IGN one ended up clashing with another event. We'll get to that one later. Secondly, there was a lot of crossover with their content, not just with them but other major outlets, and Krem wasn't just talking about these events. A lot of content was already known before these events started. Kind of the issue now, publishers and devs now have a wider platform range, that being YouTube, Twitch, and social media, to promote their games. They no longer need a yearly press conference to promote their content. To highlight the issue, a site we used this year to collect information, refresh ourselves on the content and those videos you've been seeing during our content was e3recap.com. This site was a godsend for us, and we highly recommend you use them during the next year's content, or go and rewatch content from the past years, which they have archived back to 2014. There's a link in the description. The reason why Krem bought this site up is it also highlights when exclusive content was revealed during each event, And when you have 30 plus games in your show, but only 1 or 2 are actually exclusive to you, it's an issue when people start seeing repeated content late into the event week. To be fair, the PC Gaming Show had about 10 exclusives of their content, but that leads us to Issue 3, which is kind of a bit of X and Y situation, as it's partly about the filler content and partly about the length of the event. I think Krem wants to call it the talking head effect. Going back to the PC Gaming Show, it had 10 exclusives, enough for us to make a video, right? Kinda. The problem is the length of the show itself. If you factor in the amount of games featured, around 35. Say 1.5 minutes per trailer average, you're looking at, what, under an hour's worth of content to show. Factor in intros and interviews, should be an hour-ish. This was around an hour and a half long. How? Product placement. The PC Gaming Show is unique as it's sponsored content, so they've had to plug, for instance this event, Nvidia's GeForce Now service every other video. The problem isn't limited by that, as hype set up by the presenters have always been an issue, talking how amazing a game is, and look at the gameplay footage, which is mostly an in-game CGI trailer with gameplay being mimicked and not actually shown. Which after the 20th game of that event, or 90th game seen overall, you kinda understand why people scream, "Get to the game!" over and over, when what the presenters are saying is moot without the content to back this up. This is kind of the reason why the best events of these seasons are the show don't tell ones, and if they do, it's normally explaining why of a change, or it's related directly to the product. No buzzwords or fluff. This is one of the reasons Nintendo Directs are now copied and set as the new standard. They have this down to an art. So, with the lack of momentum with exclusive content close together, with the added downtime with the filler talk, it's quite easy for someone to zone out during those longer streams, so ended up less interesting to talk about. Like now, you've probably done the same with this video while I've been talking. It may have seemed we've focused a little bit on those 3 events, but those are the ones close to actually being worth covering. For example, Capcom's content was trailers they had already posted on YouTube, with only the cross-purchase DLC and the amiibo information for Monster Hunter Stories being new content. If you know anything about Nintendo products, by the time any video went out, it would have already sold out. Gearbox spent more time dicking about with the cast on the Borderlands set than actually showing games. The sole new content it had was a 5-second clip of a dev comment on Homeworld 3 at the end of every video segment, which totaled less than 30 seconds of content overall. Finally, Warner Bros. And Bandai Namco had a single interview for less than 10 minutes. It's worth noting that all mentioned were part of the E3 digital event, which had their whole presenter staff and stage to promote each event. It's been theorized that the reason for this many events this year is because each publisher's stream time was basically their show floor space this year. What that generally means is that every year the ESA goes to each publisher and asks how much of the show floor they wish to buy for that year's events. As this is done ahead of time, their digital place was in lieu of the lack of actual public event. Here's the kicker. It's been said that if the publisher skips a year of the show, the ESA are less likely to ask them going forward, although we here can't 100% confirm this. But it could explain the reason why Nintendo's Treehouse is always at E3, despite them not having an active presence of the show for some time. And this could explain why a lot of these digital events felt more token than anything else. Now you're thinking, well, this is all well and good, but why go so hard into these events? There is a reason, and it's called Koch Media. A little setup before we go into this. Koch Media is a holding group which owns game publishers and dev teams like Deep Silver, Flying Wild Hog, and Vertigo Games. These were recently bought by Embracer Group, which many of you will know under its original name of THQ Nordic. Now, Koch Media were featured in the Summer Games Fest showcase, promoting their new publisher arm, Prime Matter. Despite the fact it was a quick 2-minute trailer of games the publisher owns, the biggest takeaway was the 12 games under this new banner. Krem opted not to cover this in the video of the Summer Games Fest showcase, as they were having their own event the following day. The event started out well. The presenter introduced themselves, and Jeff Keighley reintroduced himself as the co-host. It was a very Zoom call-like, with each only appearing on screen when they talked. It wasn't a conversation to say, it was more, I'm going to say my part and that's it. Then came the same trailer we saw at Summer Games Fest. This is when the event started to see its bad editing. The volume was not leveled to the same point as the hosts. Let's say many headphone users weren't listening for much longer, as the trailer basically was deafening, Krem being one of them. First up, the presenter introduced Painkiller 3's interview. The interview itself was fine. Jeff spoke to a member of the development team with both people on screen. The interview lasted around 3 minutes, but people realized something odd about the interview. Very little, if at all, information talked about was about the game in question. It was more talking around the history of the publisher and working with this new publishing arm. To cap it all off, no game footage at all was shown before, during, or after this interview. Jeff and the presenter continued talking. The presenter reiterated that Prime Matter has 12 games under development, and the content they'd be showing us would either be alpha, beta, or just about to be released, thus setting expectations for gameplay. Next was an interview with the member of the team creating The Chant, working title, in which the presenter and the developer alternate between question then answer style of interview, in which the presenter and developer did not share the screen like the last interview. The interview itself felt to have a lot of hard cuts, where it didn't seem that the presenter herself was actually asking the interviewee the questions, and everything was recorded separately. The flow of the footage was off because of it. This interview was 8 minutes long and had the same outcome. The focus was on developing games and working with Prime Matter rather than the game itself, and yet again, no game footage at all. If the penny didn't drop for most people by then, feel sorry for them. This whole event was 2 hours long. This ended up being an event with mostly 1.5 minutes of footage, followed by 10 minutes of interview, if you were lucky to get footage. I think the longest interview there was around 15 minutes long, and they were all mostly the same question asked, cut, question answered style of interviews. Added to that, on review of the event again, it's noticeable that most of the event's content were read from a script, as you could see everyone looking down below the camera and reading along. It didn't feel natural, it felt scripted. To be fair, there was game footage in a handful of the 11 interviews, but it was mostly concept footage, with one standout, Scars Above, which actually showed 7 minutes of gameplay. The interviews themselves may have not been as bad if they were standalone as interviews and not strung together. The Koch Media Prime Matter event did everything wrong in what we talked about up until now. This was the second event during the weekend, and had set expectations themselves and completely missed them. Krem lost his mind watching this, which wasted his time, as it also clashed with the IGN event as mentioned, and currently has a 1.2k like to a 2.1k dislike on YouTube. You want to know the best bit? This was sponsored content on Twitch. That's right, Koch Media had paid streamers to watch this. From what's been said, quite a few too. And to Krem's knowledge, very few actually made it through the whole event. They just made reasonable excuses to leave their stream and end it. Only one streamer that Krem has followed actually watched it to the end. In certain circles, the whole event ended up being memed, and now going full Koch, or Koching up, is used to describe bad events going forward from then on. A streamer of trusted note described the event as, like Koch Media didn't know how to create an event for Twitch, so found someone who knew Twitch. That person had no clue, that was the wrong person. Anyone thinking one of the major publishers were the worst event of 2021, please go attempt to watch this event. It's an experience to witness. Koch Media may not win the award for worst E3 event of all time, as giant enemy crabs are still king, but it's clearly a how not to when trying to create an entertaining event. Anyway, that's it for our roundup of E3 and Summer Games Fest, and our extended content on the event. Hope you enjoyed it, and please let us know in the comments below your favourite bits of the shows or our videos, and if you survived the Koch Media event. Tune in tomorrow for more news across the gaming industry, and as always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, as well as hit that bell to get notified of the next video. If you'd like to chat to us live, then come join me every Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday evening over on Twitch, link in the description. Otherwise, we'll see you below in the comments.